Welcome back to the Bluegrass Breakdown radio show. I'm Kelly Patrick here. We have a very well-known guest, especially within the college basketball world across the country. We have Gary Parrish. How are you doing tonight, Gary?
I'm awesome. You guys okay?
Doing great. Gary is a writer with CBS Sports.co. How long have you been with CBS?
I think about 5 years now. I moved there in July 2006, so the years are starting to stack on top of each other. They've been really nice to me.
Really enjoyed your work you've done there. I know that you have some ties at least to the Memphis area, and around here that has some relation to not only the rivalry Louisville's had with Memphis for many years, but also the John Calipari having been the former coach there. So
I grew up in Memphis, and so I've been, and I live here now. Because of my job with CBS. I won't say that there are better places for me to live. New York would obviously be more beneficial, but it doesn't really matter where we live. As long as you got an airport close by and a wife who understands your travel schedule, you can get away with it. So, before I was at CBS, I covered the University of Memphis basketball program for the Commercial Appeal newspaper here in Memphis. And that was 4 years with John. So he and I spent a lot of time together, and I spent a lot of time around that program. So John and I go back, I think, longer than maybe most college basketball writers go back with John because, I have had a unique experience with him, covering him basically every day for 4 years.
So you had no beef with John Calipari leaving Memphis, heading to Kentucky, right?
Oh, we've had plenty of beefs. we used to fight. We used to fight all the time. I mean, we had some classic, dial each other's numbers, and the first word out of each other's mouths are "F you" and "F you back." And, we went at it. But the one thing I would always say about John is, I think we respect each other, and I think he didn't always agree with what I said, and I certainly didn't always agree with the way he handled things. I think we both. I don't want to speak for him, but I respect him immensely as a basketball coach and as a guy to run a program. Doesn't mean that I haven't been critical of him at times. Doesn't mean that I don't think he's full of a lot of times. But in terms of running a college basketball program, I don't think there's anybody better. And he's obviously, he did it at UMass, he did it at Memphis, and he's doing it again right now at Kentucky. But I will say our relationship, people would always describe it a couple of different ways. One, certain people would say that we're best friends. Well, that was never true. And some people would say we hated each other. And though I would say there were times where we absolutely didn't get along, again, I don't want to speak for him, but I've never hated him. And no matter where we were in that relationship, if I ever needed to speak to him on a professional level, he's always been there. I mean, I saw him the other night in Starkville. He's fine. And, so we've had our ups and downs, but he's always been professional with me. And I've appreciated that. He was fun to cover. I think he made my job, a little more relevant than it would have otherwise been because he, covering John Calipari is different than covering the University of Memphis. And I have thought many times, I wonder if I would have gotten the opportunity at CBS if I would have just been covering Dick Price at Memphis or Josh Pastner at Memphis as opposed to covering John Calipari at Memphis. Because I was covering John, more people were interested in my work, and it exposed me to the people who make these kinds of hires. So I don't think I owe him my job, but I do think covering him helped me get to where I'm at today.
Sure. I know that during that tenure, Calipari was winning, although it was in the Conference USA, was winning just an ungodly amount of games, wasn't he? I think there was some records set there.
He set he set every record you could imagine and really set the bar at what is essentially an impossible level. The fans haven't quite come back down from that yet. And so Josh Pastner's sitting here, I think right now, 10-3 record, Conference USA, first place, and it's panic, around here. Like, what's wrong? And the reality is, Memphis has never been the type of place where, they just ran over everybody until John got there in those last 4 years. So the idea that, they now expect to win every game, that's very much, related to the success that John had. And the funny thing is, you look up right now, and so the SEC and the Conference USA are two totally different leagues. I would never argue otherwise. He is overwhelming that league the exact same way he overwhelmed Conference USA.
He really is. I mean, he hasn't lost a home game since he's been in Lexington, and I mean, what's the record now? They've lost one game.
50 in a row now.
50 now, yeah.
So one thing that
I mean, and you can even go back. I mean, here's a stat: he hasn't lost a home conference game in like 7 years. Dating back to the days at Memphis. I mean, he's really been remarkable, and there aren't very few things in sport. I mean, sure things in sports. Nick Saban at Alabama, sure thing. I think Urban Meyer at Ohio State, sure thing. Roy Williams at North Carolina, I thought when it happened was going to be a sure thing. And John at Kentucky, the day that it happened, honestly, I never understood why they didn't hire him the first time around when they were replacing Tubby. And that's while, I had covered him. I was at CBS by then, but he was always the home run hire for that program. I mean, I know why they didn't do it the first time around because, some of the other stuff that's attached to his name, vacated Final Four, stuff like that, sort of moved Kentucky away from him that first time around. But when they, I guess, dipped to where they dipped to under Billy Gillespie, you start weighing the pros and cons, and John's pros certainly outweighed his cons. And now you fast forward to today, and here, number one team in the country, only one loss, the obvious favorite to win a national championship. This was always the way this was going to go when they hired him.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Everything you say. I know you wrote a little article, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, about the Kentucky and Mississippi State game, how they come back and just strengthening their position as national title favorite. The resiliency. It was a great article. Where's this? I mean, is this team your favorite to win it? I mean, they got to be your favorite. Are they your pick to win it?
Yeah, easy. I mean, unless somebody gets hurt or Anthony Davis' arm shrink or something like that. I mean, the reality is they're on a different level right now. And sometimes teams win a lot of games, and you go, all right, but is the roster really built to overwhelm people? Is the roster really built for a championship? Or is this just a team who happens to keep winning, but ultimately, we don't really think they're the best team in the country. I think St. Joseph's a few years ago did that. Maybe even Illinois a few years ago did that when they won all those games and lost to Carolina in the title game. Missouri this year, to some degree, won a bunch of games. We're sitting here with a very similar record, at least a couple of weeks ago, to what Kentucky had, but we still wondered, is that the type of roster that can win it all? With Kentucky, they've got the record that suggests they're really good, and they got the roster that suggests they're really good. I know that Marcus Teague's considered a weak link, if you will, but he's a pro point guard still. Deron Lem's a pro guard. He can shoot the ball. And Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is a pro wing, lockdown defender, leader, high motor. Anthony Davis is number one pick in the draft, and he's playing like it right now. He changes the way Kentucky plays. He changes the way people who play Kentucky have to play. And then Terrence Jones, he is what he is. I think everybody, including Cal, would like him to be a little more consistent, but he's still a lottery pick big, down there playing beside Anthony Davis. So, there's really no obvious weakness to this roster, and they don't have any of the other red flags that might pop up with a roster like this. Sometimes you start worrying about egos. You start worrying about guys focusing on the draft. You start worrying about guys pulling in different directions. There's no evidence that any of that stuff's true with this team. And then the other thing that people will knock them on is just that they're too young. And the only reason people say that is because we've never had a team built like this. All these young guys win a national championship. But, and so I guess it's always going to be used as it won't happen until it happens. But I've now seen that team, come back in the second half and win at Vanderbilt. I've seen the team come back in an incredible atmosphere the other night in Starkville and win that game after not only being down 13 in the first half, but being down, 3 possessions with fewer than 8 minutes to play. And they come back. They don't get rattled. They don't ever seem, to shrink in the moment. And they've got everything you need to go win the whole thing. And so, listen, when you get into that tournament, you got to win 6 40-minute basketball games. And in a 40-minute basketball game, anything can happen. Your kid can get in foul trouble. Your kid can turn an ankle. Another kid can hit 8 threes on you. We've seen good teams and dominant teams lose before. So if you want to take the field over Kentucky or the field over anybody, that statistically is the smart move because, typically in the way we decide this, nobody is a quote favorite to win it all. But this Kentucky team's special. They've got all the pieces and, I won't be surprised in the least. In fact, it'd be my pick, to cut down the nets on that first Monday down in New Orleans in April.
Okay, Gary, not to change the pace completely on you, I know it's February now, and March is coming up, so everyone wants to talk about, obviously, the March Madness that's impending. But on a little bit of a different note, the only comparable type of situation, or the best comparison that I can think of to the prospect of Louisville ever landing an NBA team would be that of Memphis landing an NBA team. So I figure since you were there before, you're there afterward, and you saw the way that it integrated within the city, and maybe the way that it impacted the Memphis basketball program. I have a couple questions. Do you think it'll ever happen? Also, do you think it has negatively impacted Memphis's basketball program at all?
There's no evidence that it's negatively impacted Memphis's basketball program at all. And some of that was because the people in town who were responsible for bringing the Grizzlies to Memphis are also heavy hitters within the University of Memphis, FedEx being the most obvious, and they were never going to pick one of the other. And so, the combination, I think maybe had it happened at a time where John wasn't in charge of the Memphis basketball program, it could have hurt. But because John was in charge, he went out of his way to work hand in hand with the Grizzlies, and you turn what could have been a negative into a positive, and also rally the fan base to say, listen, we can do this. And so the reality is, as I speak to you right now, the Tigers are still bigger than the Grizzlies in the city of Memphis. The Tigers still outdraw the Grizzlies in the city of Memphis. I mean, if you put Memphis and Rice on the one night and the Grizzlies and Lakers on the next, Memphis Rice is going to outdraw them. I mean, people care more than television ratings, clicks on the internet in terms of stories that people write it, the commercial to the newspaper, radio show. Like, if I want to do a 2-hour radio show about the University of Memphis every day, basketball program, I can. The Grizzlies kind of come and go. Now, the Grizzlies are a big deal now because after that playoff run, and a big deal because they're sitting here at 19 and 15 going into the All-Star break. But this is still a Tigers town. And though I do think there is a scenario under which when you put so many games in the same week, even if you've got the same number, even if you've got tickets to everything, it becomes difficult to do. There was a time a few weeks ago where I think the Grizzlies played on Monday, Tigers played on Tuesday, Grizzlies played on Wednesday, Grizzlies played on Friday, Tigers played on Saturday. Now, I don't even care if you have tickets to all those games. If you've got a family, you can't go to all of them. It's my job to go to basketball games. I could not go to all of them, not without getting a divorce. And so that can become a little bit of an issue. But in terms of interest in Memphis basketball, season ticket sales, television ratings, there is not a single thing that suggests that the Grizzlies have harmed Memphis in any way. And I think if the University of Louisville embraced the possibility the same way that the people at Memphis embraced the possibility, then it can absolutely work.
Gotcha. Good answer. I
Really
appreciate it. That's good, some good insight, I think. I don't know that it'll actually, I don't know how feasible it is for Louisville, but it's definitely something that pops up over the past few years pretty consistently in the local papers and everything like that. I know that you did visit Murray State recently. What did you think of the far western, the other part of the state? What did you think of your visit to Murray?
I thought it was terrific. Even when you have a team like that that's ranked in the top 10 most of the year, people still doubt it, because people don't see it. And even when they do see it, they don't see it play against other nationally relevant teams or quality teams. And then even if they do, it's not on television. And so for them to have that day last weekend where, Dick Vitale's in town and ESPN's in town and the nation is really watching that game and it's on your campus. And it wasn't only the first time that a ranked team had ever visited Murray, Kentucky. It was the first time Murray State, as a ranked team, had ever played another ranked team. And so for them to have that day and then be able to perform well on that day, I just thought it was nice. I mean, I go to Duke all the time. I go to Kentucky all the time. I go to Carolina and Kansas, and they're big games and they're fun. But you've done it before, and they've done it before, and they'll do it again probably 3-4 days from now. With Murray State the other day, you really felt like you were a part of something that those people in that building, those kids who played, Steve, everybody involved, had never experienced before, and probably, let's be honest, will never experience again. And that's nice. I can see people, in that community sitting around 10 years from now, 20 years from now, talking about, do you remember the day we were on national television, Dick Vitale was in the building, and we beat another nationally ranked team, convincingly, while the nation looked on. That happens all the time at Duke. It happens all the time at Kansas. It happens all the time at Kentucky. It had never happened there. Might not ever happen there again. And I like the story, and so I root for those guys. I like the underdog story. I like the little guy story, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in March. Get an opportunity to advance into that tournament and really put a nice bow on what's been a really nice present to not only that community but the college basketball too. We need stories like that, and Murray State's provided one this year.
No, I completely agree. We need to see what they can do outside of the OVC, but it'll be exciting to watch. I had a question about kind of officiating throughout the nation. And of course, you've seen a lot more nationally than we all have, definitely. But of course, every fan base thinks the officials are terrible, obviously. But have you noticed the officiating this year, inconsistencies? I mean, how much do you think that's been a contributing factor from, the Xavier Cincinnati game? I'm actually a Xavier alum, so this is a little bit personal to me, but I mean, how do you feel the officiating has changed since that incident, and do you think it's for the worse or for the best?
Well, I think, that was a bad day, and those officials let that get out of hand, and they let that get to a point where it never should have gotten. The reality is, I think officiating is, they make bad calls, and I think the incident at NC State over the weekend where Carl Hess ejected, removed two former players, but fans in that setting from a game, that's unacceptable. They bring that heat on themselves. I think the larger issue, it seems a little foolish to me to believe that, the officiating has just gotten so bad in the year 2012 that it's never been this bad before. I think the more likely scenario is that we see more than we've ever seen before. There's 5 games on television every single night. Everything has, 50,000 replays. If an official blows a call, not only does he blow it on national television, he blows it in a world where it's going to be on YouTube, it's going to be on message boards, it's going to be on Twitter, it's going to be on Facebook. And so we see the calls. We see more than we've ever seen. And so I assure you, back in 1982, there were officials making bad calls every night, but there was no internet, there was no Twitter, there was no ESPN News, there was no instant replays. And so we just weren't aware. I just think today, because of technology, we're just aware of every bad thing that happens, and it's sort of beaten into our skull. So, yeah, there are still problems with officiating. The block charge call.
Are you there?
Looks like we'll get Gary back on the line.
He's there.
Okay. Sorry, are you there, Gary?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, we lost you for a quick second. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just think that officiating is bad. There's complaints and they're valid, but I imagine it's always been this way. We just happen to see the bad because of YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and message boards and ESPN News more than we've ever seen it.
Yeah, you make a great point. Nobody ever talks about it like as that standpoint. You got all these social medias these days, so I think that's a good point. Before we let you go, you don't have to get into too much detail about this. Obviously, this is Kentucky. This is Louisville. March is coming up. We all know Rick Pitino's past. He's a hell of a coach. He still is a hell of a coach. Everybody judges Calipari saying he's just a talent guy. Who would you take in this upcoming tournament, right, as of today, as the coach of your team, no matter the talent-wise?
Oh, I think Rick's one of the greatest basketball coaches of all time. I think he's tremendous. The thing about college basketball is that it's not just about coaching. Coaching. I've had people all the time talk about, they want to come talk to me because they write about college basketball. And they say, listen, I love coaching basketball. How do I go about breaking in? I said, you love coaching basketball? They said, yeah. I said, well, then you don't want to be a college basketball coach. You want to be a high school coach, or you want to be an NBA coach. But college basketball is not about coaching basketball. It's about 10-20% of the job. College basketball is about recruiting. It's about fundraising. It's about marketing. It's about selling. It's about promotion. It's about putting guys in the league. And nobody's better than that at job. So, I guess the best way I could say this, if I were answering honestly, I think in terms of X's and O's and being a basketball coach who can adjust on the fly and make adjustments in game and expose matchups and all those things, I would take Rick. I think he's one of the best of all time. In terms of running an entire program and doing everything it takes to be in charge of a basketball program in the year 2012, I don't think there's anybody better in the world than John Calipari. And I will also say this. As somebody who's fed in on John's practice practically every day for 4 years, I think it's an unfair criticism when people say he just gets talent and wins with it. He does get talent. There's no getting around that. But not everybody wins with talent. Baylor's got a really talented roster. They seem to be going the other direction right now. Mississippi State's got 3 pros probably on its roster. They've lost 4 straight games right now. It is a talent and that John possesses to be able to get elite level prospects, bring them together, get them on the same page, make them play hard, and make them guard for him. That is not simple to do. Ask Bill Self. Ask Mike Krzyzewski. Ask Roy Williams. It is not the simplest thing to do, and he is able to do it with almost a brand new bunch pretty much every single year. So, and in terms of X's and O's, he's underrated in that. He's easy to pick on, because sometimes people say, well, it looks like they're playing AAU ball. Well, if you've got better players than everybody else, what's wrong with letting your players be better than the other team's players? That's coaching too. And so, if the question, who's the better X's and O's coach, Rick Pitino or John Calipari? I would probably say Rick Pitino, but I think John's underrated as an X's and O's coach. And in terms of assembling talent and getting it to play hard, I don't think there's anybody better in the country.
That's definitely a good point, in my opinion, Gary, about the level of defense that he's gotten his team to play this year, and that's certainly a testament to your coaching ability. Gary, we want to let you know that we really appreciate you coming on our show. As far as, the totem pole, we realize we're not necessarily too far up there, but you certainly are pretty high up there, and we really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much, Gary. Have a good one.
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me, and I'll catch up with you down the road. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, Gary. Have a good night.
Thanks, man.
Another good interview with Gary Parrish from CBS Sports.com. We will take a quick break. We'll get right back. Then we're going to have Brent Lepping from
Louisville Sports Live.
LouisvilleSportsLive.net. He'll be on, and we'll talk Cardinals since we talked about a bunch of UK with Gary. So we'll be back in just a moment. Bluegrass Breakdown.